When life hits you hard, it's tempting to retreat, to hide, to look the other way and pretend that the chaos swirling around you isn't as bad as it seems. This is especially true when it comes to heartbreak, and even more so when it involves the deep emotional attachment that comes from sexual intimacy. A breakup of that magnitude can feel like your very soul is being torn apart. And in a way it is. It's the kind of pain that leaves you gasping for air, unsure of who you are anymore, what the future could possibly hold. And so what do most people do? They run, they distract themselves. They bury the pain beneath a mountain of meaningless activities, scrolling endlessly through social media, binge-watching shows until the early hours of the morning, or drowning their sorrows in short-term pleasures that might numb the ache for a while but inevitably leave them feeling emptier than before. But here's the hard truth: running doesn't work. The pain doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It doesn't dissolve into nothingness simply because you distract yourself. It lingers. It festers. And it waits for the quiet moments when you're alone in bed at night, or when you see something that reminds you of the person you lost, and it comes rushing back stronger than ever. You can't outrun emotional pain. You can only confront it. You can only face it head on and wrestle with it until you understand it. That's the only path forward, and it's a brutal one. But it's also necessary. Because until you face the reality of your pain, you'll never be free from it. You'll remain trapped, caught in a cycle of avoidance and denial that only deepens your suffering over time. So, what does it mean to face your pain? It means sitting with it, as unbearable as that sounds. It means acknowledging the full weight of your grief, your sadness, your anger, and even your regret. It means admitting to yourself that yes, this hurts more than you ever thought it could, and that's okay. It's supposed to hurt. That's what happens when something you cared about is taken away. That's what happens when a deep emotional bond is severed. You're not broken for feeling this way, you're human. But feeling the pain isn't enough on its own. You have to go deeper. You have to start asking yourself the hard questions. Why does this hurt so much? What did this relationship mean to me? What part of myself did I lose in the process? And what can I learn from all of this? These are uncomfortable questions and they don't have easy answers, but they're essential. Because when you start to ask these questions, when you start to really examine your pain, you begin to uncover the deeper truths about yourself and your life. You begin to see the patterns that led you to this point, and you begin to understand what needs to change if you want to avoid repeating the same mistakes in the future. Maybe you realize that you were too dependent on your partner, that you relied on them to fill a void inside of you that only you can truly fill. Maybe you see that you ignored red flags early on in the relationship because you were so desperate to be loved, to be wanted, that you overlooked the things that should have given you pause. Or maybe you come to understand that you weren't fully honest with yourself about what you really wanted, and that dishonesty ultimately led to the breakdown of the relationship. Whatever the case may be, this process of self-reflection is crucial. It's how you grow. It's how you turn your pain into something meaningful. Because pain, as awful as it is, has the potential to be a powerful teacher. It can break you, yes, but it can also transform you. It can show you things about yourself that you never would have seen otherwise. And it can push you to become a better, stronger, more resilient version of yourself. But that transformation doesn't happen by accident. It takes work. It takes courage. And it takes a willingness to confront the darkest parts of yourself, the parts that you'd rather ignore, the parts that make you uncomfortable or even ashamed. This is where so many people get stuck. They don't want to do the hard work. They don't want to face their pain because it's too overwhelming, too terrifying. So they stay in denial, they keep running, and they never heal. They just carry their wounds with them from one relationship to the next, hoping that someone else will come along and fix them. But no one else can fix you. That's your job. You have to be the one to pick up the pieces of your broken heart and start putting them back together. You have to be the one to take responsibility for your healing. No one else can do it for you. And that's a daunting thought, isn't it? Because it means there are no shortcuts. There's no magic solution. Healing takes time. It takes effort. And it takes a level of honesty with yourself that most people aren't willing to face. But if you can do it, if you can face your pain and learn from it, you'll come out the other side stronger than you ever thought possible. You'll realize that you don't need to be afraid of heartbreak, but you've been through it and you've survived. You'll understand that pain isn't something to be avoided at all costs. It's something to be embraced, to be learned from. And you'll know that no matter what happens in the future, you have the strength to handle it because you've done it before and you can do it again. So don't run from your pain. Don't numb it or bury it or pretend it isn't there. Face it, feel it, and let it teach you what you need to learn. That's how you move forward. That's how you heal. And that's how you turn heartbreak into something meaningful, something that can guide you toward a better, brighter future. Emotional attachments are far more complex and profound than many people are willing to acknowledge, and that complexity becomes especially evident when it comes to the aftermath of sexual relationships. You see, we live in a world that often trivializes intimacy. We're told in countless subtle and not so subtle ways that sex can be casual, that it's just another activity, like going to the gym or grabbing coffee. But the truth is, it's not. It never has been, and it never will be. When you engage in a sexual relationship with someone, whether you realize it or not, you're forming an attachment at a deep primal level. It's not just about pleasure, it's about bonding. Our biology is wired for connection, and sexual intimacy triggers some of the most ancient systems in the human brain, systems that are designed to create emotional closeness, to build trust, and to foster a sense of attachment. This is why breakups after a sexual relationship can feel so devastating. It's not just your mind reacting, it's your entire being, your entire nervous system that's struggling to make sense of the sudden loss. People often underestimate the power of these attachments. They think they can keep things light and casual, that they can walk away from a relationship without any emotional residue. But that's a dangerous illusion. When you form an intimate bond with someone, you're not just connecting with them on the surface, you're connecting with them at a level that runs much deeper than words. You're connecting with their vulnerabilities, their fears, their dreams. You're sharing something that's sacred, even if you don't recognize it as such. And when that bond is severed, it can feel like part of you has been ripped away. That's why breakups can be so painful. They force you to confront the emptiness that's left behind when that connection is gone. And the deeper the bond, the deeper the pain. Now, some people try to avoid this pain by shutting themselves off emotionally. They tell themselves that they don't care, that they can move on without looking back. But that's not strength, that's avoidance. True strength comes from understanding the nature of attachment, from acknowledging the impact that intimacy has on your psyche, and from learning how to navigate the aftermath of a breakup with wisdom and grace. One of the first steps in this process is recognizing that your pain is valid. It's not something to be dismissed or minimized. When you lose someone you care about, it's natural to feel a sense of grief, of loss. That's your body and mind processing the end of something meaningful. And the more you try to suppress those feelings, the more they're likely to manifest in other, more destructive ways. So instead of running from your pain, lean into it. Ask yourself why you're feeling the way you are. What was it about that relationship that mattered to you? What needs were being met? And how can you find healthier ways to meet those needs moving forward? These are difficult questions, but they're essential if you want to grow and heal. At the same time, it's important to understand that attachment is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it's one of the most beautiful aspects of being human. We're social creatures. We're meant to connect, to form bonds, to love and be loved. But with that capacity for connection comes the risk of loss. And that's a risk we all have to learn how to navigate. This is why it's so crucial to be mindful about who you form attachments with. Not every relationship is worth the emotional investment, and not every connection is going to lead to something meaningful. But when you understand the depth and power of emotional bonds, you start to approach relationships with more intentionality. You start to ask yourself whether the person you're with is someone who shares your values, someone who respects you, someone who's willing to put in the effort to build something real and lasting. And when you do form a meaningful connection, you cherish it. You don't take it for granted. You understand that love is not just about feelings, it's about commitment, about sacrifice, about choosing to show up for the other person even when things get difficult. That's what makes a relationship strong. That's what makes it resilient. Of course, not every relationship is going to last forever. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, things fall apart. And when that happens, it's important to give yourself the space and time to grieve. It's okay to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel lost. These emotions are part of the healing process. But it's also important not to let those emotions define you. You are more than your pain. You are more than your heartbreak. One of the most powerful things you can do after a breakup is to use the experience as a catalyst for growth. What did you learn from the relationship? What did you learn about yourself? Maybe you discovered that you have a tendency to lose yourself in your partner, to neglect your own needs and desires in order to keep the peace. Or maybe you realize that you have a fear of vulnerability, that you push people away when they get too close. Whatever the lesson, take it to heart. Use it to become a better, wiser, more compassionate version of yourself. And when you're ready to open your heart again, do so with the understanding that love is always a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. Because at the end of the day, it's our connections with others that give life meaning. It's the bonds we form, the love we share, the memories we create that make all the pain and heartache worthwhile. And when you truly understand the power of emotional attachment, you stop fearing heartbreak and you start embracing the messy, beautiful, unpredictable journey that is love. When a relationship ends, it can feel as though your whole world has been turned upside down. You wake up in the morning and for a moment, everything seems normal. And then in an instant, it hits you. That person is gone. The person you leaned on, the person who knew you better than anyone, the person who was part of your future, that person isn't there anymore. And the silence can be deafening. It's tempting in moments like these to look for someone or something to blame. Maybe you blame your ex, maybe you blame yourself, maybe you blame fate or timing or the universe. But none of that is going to help you. Blame might give you a temporary sense of control, but it won't heal your pain. It won't bring you peace. The only thing that will do that is taking responsibility for your own healing. Now, when I say take responsibility, I don't mean that you should blame yourself for everything that went wrong. That's not what this is about. Taking responsibility isn't about self-criticism or self-punishment. It's about recognizing that no matter what happened, you have the power to shape your future. You have the power to decide how you're going to respond to this pain, how you're going to grow from it, and how you're going to rebuild your life. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to stay stuck in the past, replaying old arguments in your head, obsessing over what you could have done differently, or waiting for some magical moment where everything will just feel okay again. But that moment isn't coming, not unless you make it happen, because here's the hard truth. No one else is going to fix this for you. No one else can take away your pain, and no one else can give you the closure you're looking for. Closure doesn't come from an apology or from hearing your ex explain their side of the story or from getting back together one last time to talk things through. Closure comes within. It comes from deciding deep down that you're going to move forward even if you don't have all the answers, even if it still hurts, even if part of you doesn't want to let go. And that's where responsibility comes in. When you take responsibility for your healing, you stop waiting for someone else to make things right, and you start taking steps to make things right for yourself. Maybe that means seeking therapy or journaling about your feelings or talking to a trusted friend. Maybe it means setting boundaries so you're not constantly checking your ex's social media or reliving old memories. Maybe it means focusing on your physical health, getting enough sleep, eating nourishing food, and moving your body in ways that make you feel strong and alive. Whatever it looks like for you, the point is that you're actively engaging in your own healing process. You're not just sitting back and hoping that time will magically erase your pain. You're doing the hard work of healing, and when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels unfair, even when you're not sure if it's making a difference. And here's the thing, it will make a difference. Slowly, gradually, you'll start to notice that the pain isn't as sharp as it used to be. You'll start to feel moments of peace, moments of joy, moments when you're not thinking about your ex at all. And those moments will get longer and longer until one day you'll realize that you've truly moved on. But healing isn't just about letting go of the past, it's also about building a better future. A breakup can be an opportunity for transformation if you let it. It can be a chance to reflect on what you really want in a relationship, on what your non-negotiables are, on what kind of partner you want to be. Maybe in your last relationship, you lost sight of your own goals and values. Maybe you became too dependent on your partner, or maybe you pushed them away because you were afraid of getting hurt. Whatever the case may be, now is the time to take an honest look at yourself and ask, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? That's not an easy question to ask because it requires humility. It requires acknowledging that you're not perfect, that you made mistakes, that there are things you need to work on. But that's also where real growth happens. When you stop blaming other people for your problems and you start taking responsibility for your own life, that's when you become truly empowered. And when you're empowered, you're no longer at the mercy of your circumstances. You're no longer waiting for someone else to come along and make you happy. You're creating your own happiness, your own sense of purpose, your own sense of fulfillment. And that's the kind of strength that will carry you through any heartbreak, any setback, any challenge that life throws your way. It's also the kind of strength that will help you build healthier, more meaningful relationships in the future. Because when you take responsibility for your own happiness, you're not looking for a partner to complete you or to fix you. You're looking for a partner who can grow with you, who can challenge you, who can stand beside you as an equal. And that's the kind of relationship that lasts. That's the kind of relationship that can weather the storms of life because it's built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and accountability. So, if you're going through a breakup right now, I want you to remember this: you are not powerless. You are not broken beyond repair. You have the strength, the wisdom, and the resilience to heal from this, to grow from this, and to create a life that's even more beautiful and fulfilling than the one you had before. But it starts with you. It starts with taking responsibility for your own healing, for your own happiness, for your own life. And when you do that, when you truly commit to your own growth and transformation, there's nothing that can hold you back. When you go through a breakup, it can feel like the end of the world. And in some ways, it is the end of one world, at least. The world you built with that person, the future you imagined together, the habits and routines you created, all of that is gone. And in the aftermath, it's easy to feel lost, adrift, like you're standing in the rubble of something that once made sense. But here's the truth, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay broken. You have the power to rebuild not just your life, but yourself, because that's what a breakup really is. It's not just the end of a relationship, it's an opportunity for transformation. It's a chance to rise from the ashes of what you were and become something better, something stronger, something more resilient. But that kind of transformation doesn't happen automatically. It takes effort, it takes discipline, and it takes a willingness to confront the parts of yourself that you may not want to look at. In the aftermath of heartbreak, there's a tendency to fall into one of two traps. The first is the trap of self-pity. You tell yourself that you're the victim, that life is unfair, that you'll never be happy again. And maybe you indulge in behaviors that numb the pain temporarily: too much alcohol, too much scrolling through social media, too many late nights spent reliving old memories. But none of that is going to help you heal. It might distract you for a while, but it won't bring you any closer to the person you want to be. The second trap is the trap of avoidance. You tell yourself that you don't care, that the breakup didn't really affect you, that you're fine. And maybe you jump into another relationship right away, or you bury yourself in work, or you pretend that everything is okay. But deep down, you know it's not. Deep down, you know that there's a part of you that's still hurting, still grieving, still trying to make sense of what happened. And that's why it's so important to confront your pain, to face it head on, and to use it as fuel for growth. Because pain, as awful as it is, has the potential to be one of the greatest teachers you'll ever have if you let it. Pain forces you to pay attention. It forces you to ask questions. Why did this relationship end? What role did I play in its downfall? What patterns do I keep repeating, and why? These are not easy questions to ask, and the answers are not always pleasant. But if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to be honest with yourself, you can come out the other side of this heartbreak as a stronger, wiser, more grounded version of yourself. And that's where the real transformation happens. It happens when you stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as someone with the power to change, to grow, to build a better life. It happens when you take the pain of the breakup and turn it into something meaningful. Maybe you realize that you've been neglecting your own goals and passions, and you start taking steps to pursue them again. Maybe you recognize that you've been settling for less than you deserve, and you decide to raise your standards. Maybe you discover that you have a tendency to lose yourself in relationships, and you make a commitment to stay true to who you are, no matter what. Whatever the lesson is, the key is to take what you've learned and use it to create a new version of yourself, a version that's more self-aware, more confident, more capable of handling whatever life throws your way. And this isn't just about preparing for your next relationship, although that's part of it. It's about building a life that's so rich and fulfilling on its own that a relationship becomes the icing on the cake, not the whole cake. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need a partner to feel complete, but who chooses to be in a relationship because it adds something meaningful to their already full life. This kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and it's one that requires patience, perseverance, and a lot of self-reflection. But it's worth it. Because when you do the work to build a better version of yourself, you're not just healing from the breakup, you're setting the foundation for a future that's brighter, stronger, and more aligned with who you truly are. And along the way, you start to notice small but significant changes. You start to hold your head a little higher. You start to make choices that reflect your values and your worth. You start to surround yourself with people who uplift you, who inspire you, who remind you of your strength. And you start to realize that the breakup, as painful as it was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that you get to write. Of course, there will still be moments of sadness, moments when the grief sneaks up on you and takes you upon you away. That's normal. Healing isn't a linear process, and it's okay to feel a mix of emotions as you move forward. But the important thing is that you keep moving forward. You don't let the sadness pull you back into the past. You acknowledge it, you honor it, and then you keep going. And as you continue on this journey, you start to see the breakup for what it really was: a wake-up call. a turning point, a chance to reinvent yourself. And in time, you may even feel a sense of gratitude for the experience because it pushed you to grow in ways that you never would have otherwise. So if you're in the midst of heartbreak right now, I want you to remember this: you are not broken. You are not defined by this breakup. You are a work in progress, and you have the power to take this pain and turn it into something beautiful. You have the power to rise from the ashes and become a version of yourself that you're proud of, a version that's stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you ever thought possible. And that's not just a silver lining. That's the real gift of heartbreak, the chance to rebuild yourself from the ground up and create a life that's truly worth living. Life, as we all know, isn't fair. It's unpredictable, messy, and sometimes downright cruel. And nowhere is that more evident than in matters of the heart. Love, which can bring us to the highest peaks of joy, can also plunge us into the darkest depths of despair. When a relationship ends, when the person you thought you'd be with forever walks away, or when everything you built together crumbles, it feels like the ground has been ripped out from beneath your feet. You're left standing in the wreckage, unsure of where to turn, unsure of how to move forward. And in that moment, it's easy to lose faith. It's easy to tell yourself that love isn't worth the pain, that vulnerability isn't worth the risk, that you'll never let anyone get that close to you again. But if you do that, if you close yourself off and build walls around your heart, you're not protecting yourself, you're imprisoning yourself. You're cutting yourself off from one of the most profound, meaningful, and transformative experiences that life has to offer. Because love, real love, isn't just about happiness or comfort or security. It's about growth. It's about becoming the best version of yourself in the presence of another person who challenges you, supports you, and sees you for who you really are. And that kind of love requires risk. It requires courage. It requires the willingness to open yourself up, even when you know there's a chance you might get hurt. So how do you do that? How do you keep your heart open after it's been broken? How do you find the strength to love again, knowing full well that love can hurt, that love can end, that love can leave you shattered on the floor? The answer, as paradoxical as it might sound, is that you have to let go of the need for certainty. You have to accept that there are no guarantees in love or in life. You have to embrace the uncertainty, the risk, the messiness of it all. And you have to trust that no matter what happens, you have the strength to handle it. Now, that doesn't mean you should throw yourself blindly into every relationship that comes your way. It doesn't mean you should ignore red flags or settle for less than you deserve. What it means is that you need to approach love and life with a sense of balance. You need to be open, but also discerning. You need to be vulnerable, but also grounded. You need to be willing to give your heart, but not at the expense of your sense of self. And that takes work. It takes self-awareness. It takes knowing who you are, what you want, and what you'll rate. It takes setting boundaries and sticking to them, even when it's hard. And it takes the ability to walk away from a relationship that isn't serving you, even if it means facing the pain of another breakup. But when you do that, when you approach love with both an open heart and a clear mind, you set yourself up for the kind of relationship that can truly change your life. You set yourself up for a relationship that's built on mutual respect, trust, and authenticity. A relationship where both partners are committed to their own growth and to each other's growth. A relationship that can withstand the inevitable challenges and setbacks that life will throw your way. And here's the beautiful thing: when you're in a relationship like that, you realize that love isn't about avoiding pain, it's about facing it together. It's about being there for each other even when things are hard. It's about choosing each other over and over again, even when the initial rush of infatuation has faded. It's about building something real, something lasting, something that's worth fighting for. But even if you're not in a relationship right now, even if you're still healing from a breakup, you can start building that foundation within yourself. You can start cultivating the qualities that will make you a better partner, a better friend, a better person. You can start working on your own growth, your own happiness, your own sense of purpose. Because here's the truth: you don't need a partner to be whole. You don't need a partner to be happy. You have everything you need within you to create a life that's rich, meaningful, and fulfilling. And when you do that, when you build a life that you love, you attract the kind of partner who's also doing the work, who's also committed to growth, who's also ready for something real. And that's the kind of love that's worth waiting for. That's the kind of love that's worth risking your heart for. Because it's not about finding someone who will complete you, it's about finding someone who will walk beside you on this messy, unpredictable, beautiful journey that we call life. And yes, there will be pain along the way. There will be heartbreak. There will be moments when you question whether it's all worth it. But if you can find the courage to keep your heart open, to keep loving, to keep growing, you'll discover that the pain, as real and as overwhelming as it can be, is just one part of the story. It's not the whole story. It's not the end of the story. The end of the story is up to you. It's up to the choices you make, the risks you take, and the love you give. It's up to your willingness to face the uncertainty, to embrace the messiness, and to keep moving forward even when it's hard. Because at the end of the day, that's what life is really about. It's about showing up again and again with an open heart and a courageous spirit. It's about loving even when it hurts. It's about taking the risk because you know that no matter what happens, you have the strength to handle it. And that strength, that resilience, that courage, that willingness to love again after heartbreak is what will carry you through. It's what will help you rise again.